I'm on. Okay, everybody, I'm going to do a little rollout today. Yesterday, I have a long teaching post that's going to go up tomorrow. So I didn't speak yesterday. I was doing some other stuff, but I don't do well when I'm not actually talking. So what's the news? John, did you not talk in the last few days because of all the news? I'm going to try to give you the best sources I have. But from what I understand, the big news, for those who are not watching news, when I was in New York, I used to walk past Trump Tower. By the way, my son-in-law and daughter are staying at the old house in New Jersey. They went and visited Grandma. And my son-in-law, Anthony, posted walking over the George Washington Bridge. I saw those pictures yesterday. And that was nice because, many years I was not back in the old area as regularly as I had been. And to see those pictures, and when I saw them, of course, it reminds me of the walks on the bridge. So here's the news. I believe I got it right, but Chuck Schumer, Maxine Waters, and Nancy Pelosi, they went to Trump Tower. By the way, Trump Tower, because I walk it, is about 5 blocks from St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is a wonderful historic church in New York City, which you all see me go to when I'm up there. So if I got it right, they showed up in front of Trump Tower, and they got the Bishop of New York. It's a cathedral city. I forget who it is now. It used to be Timothy Dolan, used to be the bishop, but I think he made cardinal. But either way, so the bishop showed up, and the news was he was going to cast demons out of Schumer, Pelosi, Waters, and the CNN. Also, CNN was there, and they were all demon possessed. And the bishop they apologized to Trump there in Trump Tower. They admitted that they were demon possessed, and the bishop cast the demons out of them. But when he got to Schumer, it was a lost cause. Schumer basically, we can't do nothing with him. All right, maybe that was just a vision. Maybe it was a vision, or it could have been news if my sources were CNN. Okay, John, are you going to defend Trump? I watched some news at my daughter's house when I went to take care of the dogs. I'm taking care of their dogs. And you could see the glee. There was one report that the reporters at the Washington Times, Washington Post, one of the papers, that when they first found something out, they all cheered. Whatever it was, something negative against Trump, that they all cheered. And as I watched the news, MSNBC I caught, and CNN and all, you could see the glee and the joy. All right, the news obviously is there's been a firestorm across the country, and a lot of it is indeed created by the media. And let me just try to get past. Oh, my ear just popped. I'm losing my hearing. It just popped. I can hear this better now. Oh, by the way, my motorcycle should be on the road. Look, we had a lot of wrecks when I was riding my motorcycle back into town the other day. Right at that time, like at noon, there was a car hit a motorcycle, and then this morning I think somebody was killed on one. It's just people don't look out for motorcycles. But I took that new bike down to, I took the title and all, and I believe the legislature in Texas, the same one that passed SB 4, but I believe they got rid of the requirement for inspections on vehicles, meaning some states, I think only 16 states, have the requirement you got to have your vehicle inspected. And I'm almost sure they got rid of it. Now, whether it went into action yet, I didn't know, but I'm pretty sure they got rid of mandating your vehicle to get inspected, except for commercial trucks. So I took the title to that motorcycle to the courthouse in Oasis County, and was going to transfer everything and get the motorcycle legal. I have insurance on it, though. And then right at the last minute, and I didn't lie, because people lie about the price and all, And I told her, dear, I just bought it the other day, and this is what I paid. But then she said, oh, did you have it inspected? Now you got to bring the inspection proof in when you register your vehicle or renew your license plate. And I said, well, actually, I didn't get it inspected yet because, I said, from what I understand, we don't need it anymore because I follow the news. And she kind of said, no. And then she said, I heard something about it, but you still have to get it inspected. And I said, okay. So I had to get a temporary plate until the end of the month. I had to order a lens to get for one of the turn signals. If it comes in today, I'll have it on the road today. But then as I talked to her, I realized she's obviously very liberal, because then she said, I said, well, they did a study across the country in the states that do not have inspection required. The accidents and all, the number of accidents and all doesn't really go up. And, well, then she said, well, people need to get their vehicles, and because a lot of people, and then she got into global warming and all, and I thought, I kind of told her, well, I do Christian blog and I comment on news. But then I realized, maybe she's like an ultra-liberal, and maybe they don't require inspections, but she's just making me get it. But either way, I checked online, so that should be ready to go. All right, the news. The original firestorm, the whole thing about Russia collusion, I want liberals and conservatives to see. Is it justified now in the investigation of General Flynn, whether or not he had any collusion with the Russians previously, and he obviously was one of Trump's men? Look, yes, investigate it. Now we have Robert Mueller, the former head of the FBI. I think he was also the head of the 9/11, a part of the 9/11 Commission. So they just appointed a special counsel. He's now going to look into that aspect of it. What about, John, the whole thing, though, of Trump when he fired James Comey? Now it's in the hands of special counsel, so Justice Department is not going to be investigating that. Was Trump, when he said to Comey, which has been reported and Trump pretty much admits, Trump had a conversation with former FBI head James Comey and said, I wished you could drop the investigation on Michael Flynn, because Michael Flynn, General Flynn, is a good man. Now, Trump, from the beginning, has viewed all of this as just partisanship. That's how he has viewed it. The Democrats had the same thing whenever they were investigated. They're after us. Now, Trump said after the firing of Flynn, General Flynn was finally fired because, quote, he lied to Mike Pence about conversations with the Russians, and therefore the firing took place. After the firing of General Flynn by Trump, or his resignation, Trump still tweeted something and came out and said, what they did to Flynn was wrong, he was a good man. All right. Now, if Flynn really had something going, I don't think Trump would have said that, meaning Flynn's hiding collusion that him and Trump had with the Russians. And the conspiratorialists might say, well, no, but he was glad Flynn got fired so he wouldn't spill the beans on all the illegal contacts and collusion. I just don't read it that way. Trump initially even contradicted the own written statement when they fired Flynn. The justification was he lied to Mike Pence, vice president, about his contact with the Russians. But even after that came out, Trump still said they railroaded a good man. Now, when you read all this, Trump is not a politico. He's not establishment. And obviously, he shouldn't be tweeting and making so many statements. But when you look at it, that's what Trump felt, that Flynn was railroaded. And so when he had the conversation with James Comey, which supposedly Comey took notes, memos, he basically said the same thing. He said, look, I wished you could drop the investigation. Now, he shouldn't have said it. But he basically said the same thing. He probably sincerely believes that they railroaded Flynn. All right, now they're going to have to investigate whether this was obstruction of justice. But let me show you in the media. The other thing that's the big firestorm, and how the media did not portray it correctly, was when Trump met with the Russians. He just met with Erdogan too yesterday. That's another story, the president of Turkey. But when Trump met with the Russians, Lavrov and Putin, I guess, but the ambassador, he also gave them, quote, top secret information, which CNN reported they all knew the name of the city where the information Trump gave to Lavrov, to the Russians. They all knew it. But when they knew a particular city where a threat from ISIS was possible in the whole thing of the laptop bombs, that's a new thing that ISIS might do, bombs on laptops. Okay. Trump actually told the Russians, here is a threat that we are aware of, you might not be aware of. He gave the Russians, in private, the name of the city where this threat from ISIS would come from. CNN and now this got leaked out. It got leaked out from people inside the intelligence community. And then, for the first time, it was reported worldwide by our media. And then the way they reported it is said, now that the world knows that the secret information and the city, which more than likely was intelligence from our ally Israel, now that the world knows lives are at risk and Israel might be so upset with Trump because he shared top secret information and he does not have the right. Whenever a president shares anything, he automatically declassifies it. He is the supreme one that says, second, in the context of what Trump did, that in itself is not illegal what he did. But CNN reported it in a way, and the media reported it in a way, that Trump revealed classified information. Well, obviously that's classified. And then, when they realized it's not illegal what he did, and even McMaster, who I'm not a fan of, said the same thing. This was a private conversation. You said, but now that it got out, the only reason it got out is because the media reported it. The media reported it. That's why it got out. And it got out because somebody leaked it. People that are within, quote, deep state said, here's another thing. Let's get a firestorm over this. Why was it not wrong for Trump to tell Lavrov about that threat? It wasn't Donald Trump who allied with Russia in the whole thing in Syria. That was President Obama. And they allied, Obama and the U.S., along with Russia, both have operations going on in Syria, military operations, to fight ISIS. But Russia and the U.S. have had differences of how to go about it. And the first agreement that we really signed was there would be a coordination of Russia with the United States concerning where our planes are going to be going to prevent any possible shoot down of a Russian plane or an American plane. So the president, the former president, was the one, which I wasn't against, President Obama, who instituted some form of agreement. Not that we were officially allies, but working hand in hand, particularly with the threat of ISIS and coordinating against that threat. Therefore, if that's still in action and that little agreement was thrown away, but then they put it back in. It was thrown away when Russia said they weren't going to abide by it anymore, when Trump shot the Tomahawk missiles, to the Syrian air base. All right, I don't want to get too much here in the weeds. So, in a conversation with another world leader, who you are presently had some type of coordination, particularly about the threat of ISIS, and ISIS actually shot down a Russian plane, I believe, it would be perfectly acceptable to garnish goodwill with the Russians, which we would need. It would be, that's not collusion. World leaders are meeting together. One of the few things that we are actually coordinating with, I just explained, which is the threat of ISIS, particularly in Syria. So for Trump to say, look, we have information there's a threat out of a certain area, that was fine. But I want you to see media bias. Then the media came out and said, Israel is outraged, because supposedly that intelligence came from Israel. Israel then put out a statement and said, we're not outraged. They had to come against the U.S. media to say, you are manipulating the story. And Israel didn't just put that statement out for consumption. Benjamin Netanyahu believes that Trump is going to be a better ally than Obama. He honestly believes that. And the media manipulated that. Russia also, whether they were joking or not, Russia said, we'll give you the transcripts of the meeting we had with Trump. That there was no secret stuff. This was what I just explained. And during the Obama administration, and I'm not a big critic of Obama, but I remember how the media portrayed the relationship with Israel. This should just give you a little hint. Our relationship with Israel, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, who's still the current president, leader of Israel, Netanyahu came and spoke to Congress about President Obama's agreement with the nuclear accord with Iran. And Benjamin Netanyahu came, spoke to Congress, and said President Obama's actions are going to lead to the possible destruction of the nation of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, made statements in the media that you could see where they said we're in absolute disagreement with President Obama. Like no other president before, he has colluded with Iran. This was the leader of Israel's view. All these statements came out. You never had a leader of Israel in the modern time make such public statements against an American president, publicly come to Congress and have a speech, and because they sincerely believed that the accord, the agreement, the nuclear accord with Iran was a grave threat, and these were public statements. The media then reported that under President Obama, the relationship with Israel was the strongest than it has ever been with any past president. Just look at that. You had the president and certain elements within Israel publicly saying, this is the worst relationship we've ever had with the U.S. president, and the actions of Obama are more dangerous than any other president ever made in the history of our country since the Restoration. So they were publicly saying, we want the whole world to know we are in absolute disagreement with Obama, and the media reported that the relationship with Israel and Obama was stronger than any other past U.S. president. That's what you call fake news, my friends. That's what you call fake news. So the news right now, most of you are aware of it. They're going to look at whether there was obstruction. Should Trump have told Comey, I wish you would drop the case against Flynn investigation because Flynn's a good man. Trump really believed that. It wasn't something, because you could see it from all the other statements he made and what I explained in the beginning. Now, it was wrong that he did that. And some are calling for the impeachment of Trump right now. There are some calling for the impeachment of Trump. These things are going to be looked at and investigated. For the most part, I think the biggest mistake that Trump made in all of the stuff, whether there was more than likely, there's absolutely was no collusion. And I remember CNN had former intelligence guy James Clapper on. And I watched the whole interview, and they asked Clapper, as far as you know, is there any evidence that there was collusion with Trump and the Russians? And Clapper had previously said, as far as I know, I have not seen anything. But then he said, I wouldn't have seen everything. My purview was not exactly in the FBI investigation, which is correct. He said, so as far as I know, there might not be evidence of collusion with the Russians, and there might be. And CNN headline was, Clapper says there might be evidence. You see how deceptive that is? If I were to ask, there was a particular person that was killed in Washington, and some media sources believe the person that was killed was a hit against him because he might have been the one that was actually leaking all of the Democratic DNC stuff during the previous campaign. They believe this person might have been the one who leaked the information to Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. And Julian Assange of WikiLeaks was adamant that the leaks they had during the campaign, leaking stuff from Hillary and all, Julian Assange said it was not Russia who provided the leaks. And in a few interviews, Julian Assange of WikiLeaks said, kind of alluded that the person that was killed, that was giving him the leaks, was a young man that worked with the Democratic campaign with Hillary. And he was killed in Washington, and they reported it as robbery and murder. But his wallet and his watch and jewelry was still on him. So there was no robbery. And some people believe that he was the one leaking. And the way things go in this world, there was a hit on him. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But some people are actually, there's some media sources that are believing that. Of course, if that was true, you would want something like that to come out. I believe if it was true, that the media would prefer for that not to come out, even if it was true. Even if somebody was killed because of political reasons, I don't believe the media would want that to come out. So, right now, where we're at this stage, there are problems, okay? There are problems. And some are indeed self-inflicted by Donald Trump. But as I look at what I just tried to explain to you, as I look at how the media reported things like Israel is so upset, sources, people are going to be dying because of what Trump shared. Do you know whenever a president speaks about an action or a threat, you could always say he revealed classified information. You could say when we are announcing war against another country, all of that is classified before we decide to say, now we're going to, whether it's World War II or whatever. And the media could have said, oh, whoever, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Truman, they released classified information. You could go down that game forever. The revealing of classified information to another country that you're talking to, that's a normal way leaders would talk to other countries, especially if you're working in collaboration with them about that particular threat, and that the country you're working with, Russia, actually already had a plane shot down by ISIS. That was acceptable. Look, a fair reading of, and the only reason that got out into the public was because the media reported it. And the media, CNN also said, we had the information. Meaning it wasn't that secret, because the media had it. But we were asked not to disclose it. That's right, because you're the media. But Trump did not. So we're in a game. We're in a huge game. Okay? If I were going to, today I was going to teach Acts 13, but I didn't get a text from my daughter. So I'm going to do this little rollout. I text her and say, I'll be out there. Sometimes my texts don't come through when you do this. I have some teaching that's going to be rolling out tomorrow and the next few days. I've commented on the restoration of the temple, the building of the temple, the initial temple in Solomon, and some images about when the temple was rebuilt. There were pictures of angels and flowers, and sort of like Solomon put pictures, images of the garden on the walls and the inside of the temple. And that was, I'm teaching that was almost like the garden was a type of restoration. You see, man was the Garden of Eden, Genesis. Man was in the presence of God. But then after man sinned, the Bible says he was banned the judgment of death. And there's an interesting scripture that says, and there was an angel with a flaming sword. So you could not come back. You were banned from the presence of God. And an angel with a sword said, no more access to God. You cannot partake now of the tree of life in the midst of the garden, because you partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and you are now banned. And I had a few things I couldn't explain about it. So does that mean, because of the sinfulness of man, no one gets back, quote, to the garden? No, only dead people make it past that. Free among the dead. I have been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And I'll tell you what, when you're a dead man walking, you could walk right past that angel with the sword. Be sure. Okay? I could elaborate more, but some of that came out from various occurrences. And the first one was that.